Welcome, everybody, to the 16th version of the Dutch Life Science Conference. I'll be your host for today. I'm Eline Vrijland van Beest. I have a background in the medical technology. I'm now a CEO of Hybridized Therapeutics, a biotech startup, and venture partner for Tuya Capital and the Blue Sparrows. Today, we have a room filled with 30 people. And I know that over there, you're watching from your homes, and I know that over 550 people have subscribed. So thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you here, and we have a really interesting lineup for this afternoon. It's the first time in 16 years that we're hosting this online, so it's a special occasion here for us today. So we're going to hear loads about the the developments in the ecosystem. We're going to see startup pitches, so loads of us to look at for us all of this afternoon. The digital interaction is going to be quite hard with you at home, and we've found a solution for that through Mentimeter. So if you have not downloaded that yet, please do so now, because this afternoon you'll be able to ask questions to the speakers, you'll be able to place comments, and we'll have people here that will ask those questions. We will not be able to answer all of them, but we'll be able to look at the answers afterwards as well. So please get involved so that we can hear your opinions from your homes as well. I would like to give the floor to Pankras Hogendoorn. He will open the conference today. Pankras is the Dean, Vice Chairman of the Executive Board at the Leiden University Medical Center and top team member of the Top Sector Life Science and Health. And he'll be joining us through Zoom. So please follow with me, and let's hear his presentation. I guess we're going to the Zoom.
Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that I'm live at the audience. At least I hear my echo in the room. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say some opening words about the need to accelerate a viewpoint from both, I think, the Bioscience Park and one of the academic centers in the Netherlands, as well as the top sector. So when we think about innovation, one of the solutions is how it works. And I think nowadays we have to realize that comes with a so-called quadruple helix, which, depending from the angle you start from, it starts with researchers. But next to that, and it's going a little slow, the progression of this slide. So here we are in the middle of the innovation, but the progression of the slide is not working. Here we go. Second to the research is, of course, the companies which transform ideas into products. Of course, we need government, not the last place for the regulatory affairs, but also, of course, for simulation programs. But very importantly, I think nowadays we have to realize that this triple helix, as it used to be called, is now extended towards a quadruple helix. Citizens are very important, not only because of their data, but also of their communication around possibilities. And when you think about, for instance, on the virus going on in our society, we do know that the data of these citizens we terribly need in order to come to solutions. So 4 players in this busy room of life science and health. So when we go back to the mission of health and healthcare in the top sector, I think we formulated quite an ambitious mission, and that was before COVID. So it's even become, I think, a little bit more ambitious nowadays when you look for the health threats which are going on. And that's what was stated in 2040, that all Dutch citizens will live at least 5 years longer, and very importantly in good health. So not only a prolongation of the lifetime, but also in good health, meaning no consumption or less consumption of the healthcare budget. And we also know very well that there is a disparity between the people in the Netherlands, depending on your postal zone. For instance, in the city of The Hague, there is within 1-digit difference, there is a more than 10% or even 15% difference in life expectancy. And I think in a modern society, we need to have a look at that as well. So a disparity between the lowest and the highest socioeconomic groups will disappear, or at least be decreased by 30%. And how are we doing that? That main mission, of course, is looking at lifestyle and environment. We do know that interventions are not always effective just by medicine, by care in the right place. So not only in the hospitals, not only at the primary life care facilities, but also at citizens at home. We especially have to have a look at people with chronic diseases, which is such a high burden on the healthcare costs. And fourth, of course, one of the problems we all have when getting older is the dementia. So when you look at the landscape nowadays, I can just give you 4 examples how these problems are solved with strategic public-private partnerships. And that's, of course, the ONCODE Institute, focusing one of the big burdens of disease, cancer. RegMedXB, regenerative medicine crossing borders, trying to have new approaches for chronic illnesses by engineering living cells. HEMT, organ-on-a-chip technologies to modulate the diseases, but also looking at animal-free interventions for drug testing. And last but not least, the other big burden for healthcare, the Dutch Cardiovascular Alliance, looking at the burden of cardiovascular disease. 4 examples of strategic public-private partnerships where both industry, as well as government, as well as citizens, as well as academia are working together. So in what kind of ecosystems you could do this? And then, of course, we are, as we are in Leiden, at least in the central unit organizing it, just to give you an example, a Leiden Bioscience Park, which is a hotspot of public-private partnerships, which houses now more than 150 companies, 14 healthcare organizations, research institutes, and most importantly, also educational institutes to educate the people for the workforce employed there. And we're doing quite well. In fact, we are in the top 5 of the campuses in Europe. And the Bioscience Park encompasses the entire change from drug development to manufacturing, from the very basics studies till the production sites. And it might be good to know that for a number of companies, amongst others J&J, the production of the vaccines is all taking place in the Bioscience Park in Leiden, a great ecosystem with a lot of economic activities, to say the least. 19,000 professionals working here in a couple of square meters with, of course, we're not doing everything there. Focused areas on early diagnostics and technologies, vaccines already mentioned, and infectious diseases, regenerative medicine, and together with TNO, prevention and lifestyle. So an example of the public-private partnerships, what I envision as the stepping stone for the progression of life science and health research, but also implementation in society with economic spin-off. So this Leiden Bioscience Park is another example. So it's already there for quite a number of years, but we figured out that when you want to compete internationally, there are a number of steps to be taken where we are quite busy with transformation of the science park into a innovation district, which means that there needs to be a higher density, not only by companies, but also with hotel facilities and catering, and extending the area towards now the Vliegveld Valkenburg. A very nice alliteration I just figured out. The proximity of people, it used to be a large park, now the density needs to be enlarged, but also the proximity of people and services, the connectivity to make a real good ecosystem. So not only companies apart from each other, but with shared facilities and high-end equipment such as the Nissan, which is now the Center of Nano Microscopy, which is heavily used now by all the drug companies for their new drug design. A very successful facility hosting not only Dutch companies, but from all over Europe. Of course, you need to have programming there, not only for the people on the park, but also for all the delegations and people from abroad who want to come there. And of course, the get together with the governmental aid agencies, both locally in the city as well as in the province as nationally. So we are quite busy transforming the already successful Leiden Bioscience Park to the next step. So having said that, at a glimpse at the life science and health landscape, the quadruple helix, how you can do that while working together in programs, and what could be a local solution to get that all together. I think that's the starting of today with a nice program, the action program. Of course, Clemens will tell us a little bit about that over her work over the past half year. Startup climate, very important for transferring academia into real businesses. It's all about money at a certain moment, so the venture challenge, important. Lifestyle does matter. I think there will be 3 speakers for that, and examples from COVID testing. And at the end, Hanneke, I'm very happy that you're here, because it must be very busy times for you, but it's a great speaker to be there to tell us all about the vaccines development currently going on in the Netherlands at Janssen. So having said that, I give the microphone back to the chairwoman, and we need to accelerate, and I just give a number of examples how I think that can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pankras. And I especially found it really inspiring what you just said about in 2040 that we all have extra 5 years in good health. I think that's a really inspiring mission that also sparks the energy for loads of new innovations and startups here in the room today. So thank you for your inspiring talk there. We would like to ask you at home and everybody in the room here to open your Mentimeter app, because we're going to test and see if you are able to use it. As I said, later this afternoon, you'll be able to ask questions to the presenters. We have time restrictions, so we will not be able to answer all the questions. But as I said earlier, after the event, your questions will be answered and published later in the week. We're going to start testing with a word cloud, and I have a question for you that I would like you to answer through the Mentimeter app, which is, what are you most excited about today? So what are you most excited about today? I'm deliberately not going to guide you with any options here. I just want to hear your own thoughts and own ideas coming up. And we're going to see the word cloud come up here in a minute with your answers. So if everybody at home, we have a couple of 100 people in the call, 30 in the room, we should get some words up here. And here we see lifestyle thoughts, venture challenge. I see loads of people curious about the startups we see this afternoon. Innovation in our area, new innovation startups, new ventures. Lineup of the speakers. I do think that's a really interesting one for this afternoon as well. The winner of the venture challenge, collaboration. Are there partners to collaborate with? Startups, MedTech. But I do see, I can't go around it. It's just the venture challenge that everybody's excited about today. So I'm really nice to see that. I can see Christian here in the room with his thumbs up, all being happy and excited about that. So for the rest of the afternoon, I won't be guiding the Mentimeter app. That will be Leon Murre from Inventus. So he'll be moderating all the questions that you have for the speakers this afternoon. We're going to go to the next part. I'm going to be announcing Clemens Roos van Dorp from the Ministerie van Economische Zaken. And I'm a little jealous because she's dialing in directly from Curaçao. So over to Clemens.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be with you this afternoon. For me in the morning, of course. But that's how it works all over the world. Well, for now it's not raining here, so that's great. The sun is shining. So I'm happy to be with you and to give a presentation. I hope you can see it and that it can be shared on screen. Because I'd like to inform you about the activities that I have done on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate and the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sport, who asked me to be ambassador for the action program, New Opportunities for the Top Sector, Life Sciences and Health. So I've got some slides because all of you know that a couple of years ago, the European Medicines Agency, and that's in the next slide, you can see it. It's a building that we have. So Nathan, perhaps you can click to the next slide. Then we have that beautiful building, and it hosts the European Medicines Agency. It was coming to the Netherlands, and it was a great achievement. It was such a boost in thinking of how we can become even better, because we are doing, of course, quite well. Otherwise, we would never have been able to get the European Medicines Agency to the Netherlands. But it gave a boost, an impulse, and we thought it could do even more for our life sciences and health sector, and also for economy as a whole. And another event took place, and that was in the next slide. You see there a nice picture of the people who went to Boston on a mission, and we presented ourselves there as, of course, a country that wants to collaborate with Boston. So Nathan, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, there, some of you will recognize yourselves. It was a very successful mission, but it was also, everybody thought, well, perhaps it is better to even connect more in the Netherlands. We present ourselves as regions very often. We do that in a good way. Leiden is one of the top regions in the Netherlands that has very fine connections all over the world. But it was found that it was necessary to develop a national proposition so that we can present ourselves as one strong ecosystem in the Netherlands and not a piling of regions, so that we can be a global hub and position ourselves strongly in Europe, more stronger than we do already. So that was incentives to think of, well, how can we organize that? How can we make a national proposition? How can we get to more profit of the relocation of the European Medicines Agency in the Netherlands? How can we do that? So I was appointed to make an action program and develop a national proposition for that. So in the next slide, you can see, well, that was not, of course, the only thing happening, because the Ministry of Health, with ZonMW, the institute, was already busy with the idea of how to make therapies future affordable and sustainable. And you see that we have a very complex system of financing. It really does not always finance the ecosystem in a way that it can accelerate like we want it to. So that's a very good initiative already existing. And of course, already mentioned also by Pankras, we have, of course, our top sector, Life Sciences and Health, Health Holland in the next slide. You see that with the beautiful missions. And this is also going on. Its achievements are already huge. So a national proposition must not be something new to that, but it must at best be an umbrella, must be an accelerator for everything that's already happening. And in the next slide, you can see that we are doing very well. We have a whole lot of life sciences companies, from academia to industry. We have a very, very nice and strong proposition already. So we are a country with a dense and strong ecosystem, from academia to business. And I think we can really compete with the world top. But now we can try to do that as a team of regional players. I mean, when you look at sports, you can have very nice regional competitions and you can have a national competition. But what you really want is to be with your national team at world top. So how can we build an even stronger national team? I got the opportunity to work on this before COVID started. And in the next slide, yeah, you see, that's the COVID pandemic I tried to picture. I was asked to start with this, so I was able to visit regions and science parks before COVID really was there in the country. but I had to work on with everybody of you during this COVID pandemic, which was really, well, it was a challenge, because like now what we do everything online. On the other hand, COVID also brought us new transparency, acceleration. A lot of things could be done just because everybody in the country thinks it is worthwhile for these patients to work together at more speed and more closely together. So things were possible that had never been possible before, I learned. Well, what else did I start to do? When you are a very strong country with a beautiful ecosystem and everybody working hard, of course, there's a lot of movement. So it's ridiculous to think that I could develop a national proposition on my own, top down. So I went to all the regions and science parks and asked, what are you good at? And what is the why? Why are we busy with this? It's not only your own agenda, of course, but for whom do we do this? What is our purpose? So in the next slide, you can see that together with the whole life sciences and health sector, with regions, everybody talking into this program, there was defined a why to sustainable improve global health, quality of life and welfare. And of course, that's not new, but it was very interesting to see that when you ask people, why are we doing this together in the Netherlands, this is what comes out. And it didn't take too much time to find out. So that's a very good basis. We know why we do it. Secondly, in the next slide, we all see that when you ask one another, how come that we are doing well? What is the success of our innovations and our ecosystem? In the next slide, everybody says, well, look, it is a team effort. It's not possible to do anything on your own. It's a team effort, not only within your region, but you work together with other regions. We already work on a national level, international level, and success is always a team effort. So what can I do with a national proposition? Let's of course identify what are the variables that you can steer on to reach a successful team. So I went, next slide, to identify with the regions the strong value chains that there already are. How come that they are strong? What do you really do together? So how do you define your how? What is the Dutch how? And that was somewhat more difficult because everybody, and you know that, wants to talk about what you're really doing, about your innovation, about your research, about the product that you deliver. But the way in which you work together that makes working together a success, that's harder to define. But we worked it out. And I'll show you that. And how can we strengthen this? Because if we want to strengthen something in the ecosystem, it is on process and is not exactly on detailed information about research or whatsoever. I don't know anything. I know a little about that now after a year, but I think it's very important to define how we can make each other stronger. So I went to all the regions. I asked everybody to give me information, fill in matrices. What does the European Medicines Agency bring to you? Why is this important? What does COVID do to you? And how can I help you strengthen your innovations and your validations, your whole ecosystem? So what I want to do with everybody is to build, the next slide, a national grid. That is, when you have all these beautiful pillars that are under the roof of the why, you need a grid, a fundament that supports it nationally and connects, of course, internationally, but it shows the Netherlands now as a whole. So what is the grid? What is it that we all connect to that makes the things go, that we can help accelerate everything? So that can be finance, that can of course be data, that can be anything. So we had to find out what is that grid that we can steer on together, or that we can ask government to help us improve. Next slide shows that at 7 tables in the regions, everybody has been able to identify strong innovations, and you see the connecting topics that go through these innovations. because of the time, I'm not going to mention them all. You will recognize them. Pankraz also mentioned them, and they're in the top sector and everywhere. But everybody said these are the things we're very, very strong at. We want to develop this. And these are also examples for upcoming new innovations that we want to, new developments that we want to encourage. So it's not only about innovation, but you see, it's about fundamental research is at the bottom of everything. Without fundamental research, we're nowhere. But without business, we are nowhere too. So the whole value chain must be smooth and the whole pipeline must work. So in the next slide, you see that we have a roof, we have pillars, and we have connecting elements for the grid. And that fundamental research, key enabling technology, education, these things are all within our Dutch house, the House of the Netherlands, that makes a very strong Dutch proposition. We are strong, so how do we strengthen this? This leads to actions, because if we're already strong on this, we can be better. And in the next slide, you see that the framework for the action program exists. This is the house with the pillars, and everywhere actions can be mentioned. Of course, these actions are not being positioned in a complete new infrastructure, because, you know, a lot of you are already busy with these actions, but we can put more emphasis on them. They can be encouraged, stimulated sometimes with money or cooperation. So we try to find what the variables are that strengthen the process of getting better in this, and to build even a stronger national house that we can live in with others from all over the world. Because if we know this, we know who we want as partners. You know, if we know how we do it and how our teams can be strengthened, then you know what players do you want to have in your team. So we can go to Boston and say, hey, we have an MOU, we have a memorandum of understanding, we want to do this and that, but really we have something beautiful to offer, so do this with us, and we want this and that from you. So both our agendas can be served. So that's what we're working at now. It's almost finished in the sense that actions have been defined. We can also try to define where they belong. And I think some of them need to be on a real national level, like, for example, data. When you really want to make, for example, a big data cohort of the Netherlands, then you really need to work together, perhaps in a new way. So we want to steer, of course, on success, on this acceleration. It must bring us forward. So we're thinking of now, how can we do that best with everybody? So no more bureaucracy, not a whole lot of things online. That would be great, because we are able to do that now, and we can help each other further. So I'd like to be an ambassador of this national new proposition, to see if the European Medicines Agency can really work with us, because of course it's for Europe, but we can help EMA as well as it can help us. And I'm so very happy and enthusiastic to work with this field, because it's really awesome. Thanks everybody for making me enjoy this so very much, and for doing all the work you do, because of course it's for the patients, and COVID shows us how very, very important it is that we are prepared and that we are very, very innovative. So thank you very much. That's what I have to tell you up to now. And a strong proposition, it will be handed over to the ministers next month, beginning next month. And I hope next year it will be in the debate of the parliament. So this is it. I'm very happy with it, and I hope you enjoy it. And of course you enjoy the outcome of the actions, because that's what it's all about.
Thank you so much, Clemence Ros van Dorp, for the good presentation that you just held. It was really nice to see the mission that we just heard of having a +5 years in good health in 2040, and see how to create an ecosystem to actually enable such a mission. So thank you for providing us with such a clear presentation on that. I'm really curious to hear if we have any questions that came in from you at home or from you in the room here for Clemence about her presentation. If you've done so yet, you are free to ask your questions through the app today. I'm going to go over to Leon to see if we get any questions.
Yeah, the questions are depicted on the screen here. I see mainly remarks, actually. COVID-19 vaccine, venture, technology, learn. So those are not really questions, but I see one question. which I think is a good one. Please define good health.
Yeah. Good health is in fact quality of life. By improving health or have the opportunities for people not to develop illnesses or live them, for example, with chronic diseases, you can live a healthier life. You know, good health is of course a subjective thing, but I think that, well, we all know that when we talk about patients, good health is as good as possible. It's also good, of course, for the person itself, but also for national economy, productivity. So it's a personal thing, but also an economic and a macroeconomic thing. So good health is a subjective. Yeah, it's about what is quality of life, and that's a search. I mean, it's never pinpointed down at, well, this is a good life. We have to see if we can find what the needs of people are, and so I think we also try to find out how can we connect all the end users, patients, citizens, let's say, to every part of the ecosystem, from fundamental research through the whole pipeline up to production and valorization, because it's about them that we are doing it, so they can define what good health is for them. And for personalized medicine, for example, it is really, really personal. And for orphan diseases, you know, it's a small group. But for COPD, for example, it's about almost 1 million people in the Netherlands that we're talking about. So it is complex, it is a search, but the search is more interesting sometimes than the finding. And I think researchers can agree with that.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Otherwise, I have a question for Clémence. Yeah,
Please.
So I was really curious. I'm one of the 420 biotech companies that you mentioned in your presentation. I'm wondering, you're looking at this from a global or a national view with loads of actionable items, but what can we do? And there's a couple of hundred people here listening to your story with me. What can we do to actually help create this ecosystem to enable your mission? Is there anything that you can give us for advice there?
Oh yes, when the action program is presented, you will see very concrete actions that we're going to undertake. And of course we will reach out to you, and you can reach out to us because, for example, let's say actions on what can we do with to develop personalized medicine in a better way. We need partners, we need good ideas and inventions, and you can also work with us in our ecosystem, which is very attractive, by the way. So do come to us and share everything you can, because we're eager to know how we can strengthen each other. It's not only our agenda, it's also yours. So we will reach out to you, and I will do that personally as well. I will visit you whenever I can. So please do so. You can find me. And you can also find Carmen van Wilseren, who is, of course, our national ambassador of the top sector, life science and health. So we are there for you. So do
Thank
come.
you. All right. Maybe we can go back to the Mentimeter to see if there's any other questions that came in from the audience.
Yeah, one question. When will you publish the action plan?
Well, I hand it over to 2 ministers in the second week of December, I hope. Because of COVID, it's always a bit tricky to say a date, but yeah, in December they will get it. So it will be sent to the Parliament shortly after that with a reaction from the government. And I think that is the moment that it will be in the open. So I hope it will be in January. It must be. So January, February, I think it will be published for everybody. Of course, there's something now, but normally I would say I don't hand it over to the whole public before the ministers have given a reaction on it. So that would be as I think the routing is.
Thank you very much, Clémence. It's time for the next speaker. So thank you very much, and all the way from Curaçao, a big wave from all of us here in the Netherlands.
Yeah, have a nice. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye. So the next presenter for us here today is going to be André van der Zande. He's an advisor to the Pivot Park and the Venture Challenge. And he's going to talk to us about the startup climate here in the Netherlands. So I'm really curious to hear your story. Very warm welcome. Okay, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Eline. Very happy to be here. And I would like to thank the organizers and Pivot Park for inviting me to have this presentation here today. And thereby, quite frankly, also giving me the opportunity to escape the home office for half a day. Good. Let's move on. In the next 15 minutes, I would like to discuss the climate for startups in the Netherlands. And I would like to start by showing some data. So the Dutch life sciences sector in numbers. And looking at that right now in 2019, that was, we represent approximately 0.7% of GDP in the Netherlands, which equals roughly to 6 billion euros. That makes us only the 9th largest sector in the Netherlands. And that could be much higher, as a matter of fact, if we compare this, for instance, to other countries in the region, which I will show to you in a minute. We have a healthy annual growth of 4%, and currently we employ approximately 30,000 people. This is only in life sciences, so not health. Then if we break that down, we see currently 726 life science companies in the Netherlands, 571 of those being biotech companies, 114 medtech, and only 41 pharmaceutical companies, which is a relatively low number. Again, especially if we compare this to some of the surrounding countries. And obviously this is all due to the fact that some of the head offices have been moved abroad, or some countries have been taken over in the Netherlands, as we all know. Now, following a quote from Holland Bio, they estimate that approximately 35% of biotech companies are biotech startup companies. This may be a matter of definition, but Holland Bio defines this as a company that exists for only a number of years and has 6 or lesser or fewer employees. So dependent on the definition, that may obviously differ, but it gives us a good indication of the number of startups, biotech startups in the Netherlands. Now, looking at this, we can ask ourselves, how do we compare to the other countries surrounding us? And relevant countries to compare for us are Belgium and Switzerland. And again, we see a striking difference here to start with the number of pharmaceutical companies. Obviously, Belgium and especially Switzerland have a very strong home base for the pharmaceutical industry still available. And that's a very healthy breeding ground for startups, as we will see. As a result of that, we see also a relatively low number of employees in the manufacturing in the pharmaceutical companies, and also employees in manufacturing and medtech companies, although there we do a little bit better, for instance, compared to Belgium. Where the Netherlands really shines at the moment is in the area of clinical trials, where we are really outstanding compared to some of the other countries, mainly based obviously on the good data infrastructure and academic reputation that we have. Looking at the GDP, as I mentioned before, for the Netherlands, this is only 0.7%, which is relatively low. And this is not to say that we are doing poorly, but if we see the GDP percentage for Switzerland, which is 6%, it just shows that we have a long way up, and there's a lot of opportunity for the life sciences sector still in the Netherlands. From an academic point of view, we score very well compared to other universities in the country. And also in that area, I think the Netherlands is very well positioned and has a very good reputation. Now, from here on, I try to summarize 3 reports that paint the picture of the current state of life sciences in the Netherlands. And I would like to start with a report from KPMG from last year, Unlocking the Life Sciences Potential. And what they looked at is what is necessary, what is it going to take to double the life science industry in the Netherlands. And they came forward with a couple of recommendations. To start with, what is positive and what is already working in the Netherlands. Clearly, we have a healthy sector and the sector is growing. We have a strong presence of stakeholders in the Netherlands. I think we have a very well diversified and broad hub presence in the Netherlands. The physical infrastructure for Netherlands as a distribution country is no surprise. And compared to a lot of other countries, we have a very positive work-life balance and workforce productivity. We already mentioned the educated and skilled workforce and a strong digital infrastructure. On the other hand, however, there are also still a couple of hurdles that we need to overcome in order to give that boost to the Dutch life science sector. Because right now still we have a complex funding, fragmented and smaller scale funding landscape in the Netherlands. We still also have a dispersed Dutch life science story, and that was mentioned before by the previous speakers as well, because although we have a very strong presence with different science hubs in the Netherlands, the cooperation across these different science hubs really clearly needs further improvement. There's also a limited presence of large pharmaceutical companies, like we concluded before. And a point that really still needs attention is the limited entrepreneurship among academic life science experts. There's still an ongoing discussion, I think, in this country going on between the value of scientific publications versus valorization. And the need for valorization and the attention that we need to give to that was also mentioned by the previous speakers here. Then obviously there is data sharing and usage limitations. There are rightfully concerns about privacy. But at the same time, a country like Sweden has been able, for instance, to very well integrate data into one system of its population, the healthcare institutions and research institutions. There's still a lot we can learn from that as well. And then last but not least, and that is something which, to be honest, strikes me already for many, many years, and that is the suboptimal debate between government and industry. I worked many years abroad, and in most of the countries outside the Netherlands, you see a more positive cooperation between governments and pharmaceutical or biopharmaceutical industry. In the Netherlands, however, we continue to focus always on the cost and the expenditures for prescription medicines. And the question is that rightfully so? And the answer is no, because we are already very low when it comes to spending as a percentage of GDP. We are the fourth lowest spending country in Europe, and also very, very well below the EU average. So why are we so concerned about the cost? And then the second point, there is always a hint towards increasing cost for prescription medication. But the fact is that this is already for many, many years rather stable, also as a percentage of total healthcare spending. We spent approximately 8%, and this is a rather stable number. So my plea would be not only to look at cost, which is completely understandable, given, of course, the demographic changes and challenges, but let's also focus maybe more on the return on investment, not only when it comes to the healthcare and the quality of the healthcare, but also for the economic opportunities that we have by investing in healthcare. Moving over to a second report from the AWTI, they came forward with 6 advices in order to promote the development from startup to scale-up. Again, the first point is about valorization, as mentioned before. Also to expand over provincial borders. We have a very strong focus to compare provinces to each other, to limit investments to a certain province, to even ask or more or less force companies to move over to a province in order to obtain financing. This is small-scale thinking. We are the Netherlands. We are in size not larger than the state of New York, and still we have this very strong inward focus rather than joining forces and making a joint proposition. Then also we need to strengthen our mix at competences at startup. It was mentioned before, the entrepreneurial skills at startups is really a point of attention that we need to focus on. And also to support and to maintain the ambition rather than frustrating ambition by bureaucracy. It's about facilitation. And then construct agreements with knowledge institutions to support further growth of startups. So financing also, but also fiscal facilitation, for instance. And then finally, improve financing possibilities for startups. Those are the 6 recommendations. And there is a strong overlap, as you have noted, with the recommendations from KPMG. Looking at the third report, which is from Holland Bio, and this explains why the slide is in Dutch, because it's Holland Bio, of course. But Holland Bio also found an interesting trend where, as I showed you previously in one of the first slides, we are very good in the Netherlands when it comes to the number of patent applications. but how do we translate these patent applications into commercial companies, and how do we translate that into products that can be developed commercially? There we are not yet as successful as a number of our surrounding countries. So we need to further improve that. Holland Bio comes with a number of recommendations. They are in Dutch here, but I will summarize them later on in one of my later slides. But one of the important advices is to develop and embed innovation in ecosystems, and that was mentioned before as well. Now, speaking on behalf of Pivot Park here as well, I would like to show you how Pivot Park makes that translation. And they have developed quite a bold vision for the future. Pivot Park wants to be one of Europe's most attractive science parks in biopharmaceutical innovation and create a successful growing campus with a strong community. That's quite a statement. But if you look at what is currently going on, then we already see now, considering the relatively short existence of the Pivot Park, that there are already over 60 companies, close to 5,000 people employed, a strong R&D focus, a production facility, and interestingly, every euro invested in life sciences and health in Oss translates to €4 in the region. So economically also very successful model. Now, the vision is bold, like I said, and maybe not quite recognizable for everybody in the Netherlands if they think of the region Oss. However, if we look at, for instance, the number of patent applications, then we see that North Brabant already ranks number 5 in Europe. So there is already a very strong basis present in Brabant on which we can further build upon. Another report from Innovation Origins stated that half of the Dutch production value and 25% of all jobs currently end up in Brabant. Especially biotech is booming. And maybe that's a little bit different than all of us expected. So clearly something very positive is happening. Pivot Park was advised by Buck Consultants, and they advised that the campus should be based on 4 strong pillars in order to create this local successful ecosystem. Obviously, you need the facilities, the laboratories, the community, and the talent. But next to that, you also need to stimulate open innovation and the PPPs. You need to combine that with knowledge carriers. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them. And I see Organon coming back as well here, as we all have heard. And last but not least, you need to have that strong focus on R&D. Then the Pivot Park is working rapidly on the development of their incubator. In close collaboration, of course, with the TTOs and business development, but also with the Venture Challenge, a strong cooperation, with the BOM, but also with Venture Challenge. And last but not least, they apply lots of coaching and mentoring for the attracted talent coming from various sources. Pivot Parks believe clearly in the future, like a similar positive message that we just heard from Pankras about the Leiden Science Park. Similar is true for the Pivot Park in Oss. So Pivot Park is going to invest in an additional 25,000 square meters with several new buildings to be realized in the next couple of years. How does that work so far? Well, very well, because if we look at the successes of only the last half year at the Pivot Park, then we see that companies like Acerta, like Synaffix, like Glycostem, Pharmacytics and Madam Therapeutics, Lead Pharma have been all very successful. And obviously the latest announcement was very important for the Pivot Park, where Pharming has decided to build a new drug substance building at the Pivot Park in Oss. Okay. Trying to summarize everything that I've shared with you today, what should be the next steps? And I was very happy to see that there's a lot of overlap with the previous presentation. So it seems that we all are quite aligned in what is necessary as next steps in order to develop our life sciences sector. So first of all, most importantly, I would say, let's view the Netherlands as one big life science community and build a nationwide ecosystem. I heard Clémence say the same before, and I'm very happy she did so, because we need to stop looking at provincial borders, at academic centers We are one country and we should have one proposition. Reduce the distance between academia and industry. I think there's a very strong difference still if you look at the situation in the Netherlands, for instance, with the United States, where it's much more normal to have a close collaboration between the academia and the industry. We also need to work and improve on the mix of competences, stimulate entrepreneurship, and continue to invest in the education of our employees. And this is an important point to me, like I said before, a government that understands the importance of life science and commits fully to support the sector, because we have a big opportunity here in the Netherlands. We have the people, we have the skills, we have the infrastructure, we just need to do it. And I hope that the whole situation around COVID-19 and the availability of certain medication may wake us all up and get that full commitment to invest in the Netherlands more frequently. Then we need to make the Netherlands more attractive for foreign investors, I believe, in different ways, and make the industry an integral part of healthcare as a whole. What do I mean by that? In a number of other countries, we see that the biopharmaceutical industry is much more part of healthcare as a whole. In the Netherlands, we are sometimes working as opposites, like we have the industry on one side, the government on another side, and the academia again on another side. This really needs to be closed, the gaps, and we need to cross those bridges and work together as one team. And then last but not least, the active collaboration between science parks crossing provincial borders. Obviously, we have a number of very important life science parks already in the Netherlands, but rather than competing against each other, we should try to close the gaps, work together, and preferably with one joint proposition going outside and compete outside the Netherlands. Which brings me to my final slide, because if all of this will work, then I'm sure in the not so distant future, Pivot Park is ready to become the new Boston, and hopefully in combination with all the other science parks in the Netherlands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leon. We're going to go over to Leon for, thank you so much for the presentation. We're going to listen to the questions that we received on the Mentimeter for you and see if we got some interesting ones here.
Yeah, we have many questions, as you can see. Maybe the left upper one. Sorry. What is your opinion about pharmaceuticals manufacturing for Europe in the Netherlands? I think it's an actual question.
Yeah, that's indeed a very actual question, referring again to what I said before. I think for some time we believed that manufacturing of pharmaceuticals was something that we should leave up to low-cost countries, obviously spurred by the discussion about the cost of medication, especially in the Netherlands. The consequence of that, I think, is what we have recently seen. So we have become overly reliant on countries like China and India. Sometimes with concerns about safety of medication, sometimes with concerns about the supply of medication. And I think that should spur the discussion about the importance of bringing back manufacturing to Western Europe. Now, in some countries, this has already happened, as a matter of fact. We still have strong manufacturing in Belgium and in Switzerland, like I said before, but for instance, also in Denmark. So the Netherlands is really, I would say, the outlier in this case, and we should try to bring back at least part of that manufacturing of that high technology that we have should bring back to the Netherlands.
Thank you. Another question: if we need to think more interprovincial, why the ROMs?
Sorry, why?
The ROMs, the regional
Ontwikkelingsmaatschappijen.
development agencies.
That's a very good question to ask. I'm wondering myself as well, because I think the Netherlands is much too small to have this type of small-scale thinking. So I would really be an advocate to, I don't want to abolish these ROMs, let me clear about that, but we should try to look for more close cooperation rather than looking at provincial borders.
Thank you.
Maybe in the meantime, I can ask you a question while Leon dives into the questions asked by the public here. You've been talking a lot about the cooperation between government and industry, improving of cooperation between life science and health companies. What do you feel is the biggest hurdle in actually bridging those gaps?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question because it's very actual, and unfortunately, it's something of a debate which we face already for quite a long time in the Netherlands. And I think what it takes is that we need to apply a broader look. We are all partners in healthcare, rather than thinking I'm on the academic side, or I'm on the company side, I'm on the government side. So what we really need to do is to create a mutual understanding on how to advance in this life science sector in the Netherlands. And that takes sometimes that you sort of make the importance of somebody else maybe somewhat larger than your own importance. We all need to be able to overstep our local importance, sometimes even our personal egos a little bit, in order of the bigger interest of the Netherlands. And I'm sure that if we do all that, we will be even much more successful than what we currently already are.
Isn't that already what's in our culture, the polderen and really, getting everybody on board? Isn't that what we're good at?
Polderen, yes, but making really the action step, and this is what I like very much again in the slide of Clémence, where there were so many signs of action, because that's what it takes now to make that step forward.
All right. Do we have time for one last little question?
We just run out of time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Then, yes. We're up to the last part of this program, and I know that many of you have been excited for this part because it was huge in the word cloud earlier today. I would like to welcome on stage Christian Herber for the Venture Challenge. Welcome here.
Thank you, Elina. And just put my things up here first. So, it's a bit funny, I'm standing in front of a room with mostly Venture Challenge participants in there, but I know somewhere out there there's a lot more people looking around. It's good to see that not only the people in this room are excited to hear about the Venture Challenge, but also the people listening in from their homes or their offices. Let me grab this thing. So it's special for me to be here today. I must admit that there have been quite some moments this year that I was a bit worried that I wouldn't be here actually today, being able to hand out a Venture Challenge award or Venture Challenge prize, or that there would even be a Venture Challenge this year. Because just like everybody else, we were of course also affected by the lockdown, by the COVID crisis. So the picture you see here is typically what we do. We do Venture Challenge workshops where we bring the people together 3 days in a row, and then we want them to stay over to work from early in the morning until late in the evening, to have dinner with us, to have a drink at the bar later on, to build a network, a community. And when we were faced with the start of the Spring Venture Challenge, because we do 2 of these Venture Challenges a year, it was about the same time that the lockdown was affected. So we had to make a choice. Are we going to go for an online program and maybe lose out on all the interaction that we want to have in the program, or are we going to postpone? So what we did at the time, we decided, okay, we're going to postpone the Venture Challenge by 3 months because we don't want to miss out on the interaction. So instead of a spring Venture Challenge, we had a summer Venture Challenge, and we positioned it just before the summer. We started in July, and it finalized in September, whereas normally we start in April and we're done sort of at the end of June, and then we would have a winner presented at the Holland Bio as a me event in June. So now we were lucky to have an in-person Venture Challenge summer edition. The teams were there interacting with each other, but we ended at the end of September or somewhere mid-September, and then there was no event. So again, we were faced, what are we going to do now? We're going to do an online announcement of the winner, which doesn't really feel right, even though it's sort of online here as well, because we want to see the exposure. We want to get the exposure of the teams towards this life science sector. So we decided again to postpone the announcement of the winner. So there's teams sitting here in the room that are waiting now for already 2 months before they finally get the answer, did I win the Venture Challenge, yes or no? And for us, because we want to do 2 Venture Challenges a year, we went straight on into the next one. So a week, I think, after the finals of the spring or the summer Venture Challenge, we were already in the first workshop of the fall Venture Challenge with another set of teams. And again, luckily, we could do the first workshop at least in person, this time wearing face masks because the regulations had been tightened a bit. But then, the evening before our second 3-day workshop, there was a press conference, again by our Prime Minister, stating even further restrictions. So again, we were faced with a choice. So what are we going to do? We're going to postpone the second workshop and have the team sort of wait out a bit longer until we can meet again in person, or are we going to do it online this time? Well, we decided to go for an online version. So the second workshop of our fall edition of the Venture Challenge was an online workshop. And I see some people here frowning that were in the summer edition. Does it work online? Well, it sort of worked. So we had the interaction. The teams knew each other, of course, from the first workshop. So they were talking to each other easily. It's not the same thing. There's some benefits. So you see here, Hans Chikan calling in from Uppsala, Sweden, from his home. Sometimes things are made easier when you have an online format. So we did the Venture Challenge workshop online, at least the second workshop. Last Friday, we also had an online finals. So the teams presented to our jury in an online fashion. The nice thing about our finals is that usually we have a large amount of investors present in the room as audience, and the teams can talk to the investors during the drinks and the break. So again, we were faced with the dilemma how to deal with this in our online finals. So instead of having spontaneous meetups, we planned one-on-one sessions in breakout rooms with our online finals, and every investor got the chance to talk to the teams. So it sort of worked again. It's not the same feeling as we have in person, but we got there. So I'm very happy today to be able to hand out 2 Venture Challenge Awards. But before I'm going to go there, just build up the tension a bit more for our teams. I also want to look at some of the alumni, because you might think this 2020 must have been a tough year for them as well. Well, actually, when I look around, I see quite some nice results. So there are quite a few Venture Challenge alumni that managed to close an investment this year. So we got some Series A by Sirius Medical. I practiced on that. They raised 4.4 million euros of investment, and they got their product into the clinic. Then yesterday it was announced that Target raised 1.35 million of seed funding. You might know Target, or you might not know them. Actually, they were called Iova. They were in the Venture Challenge 2 years ago, and actually won the Investor Forum at this very conference 2 years ago. So congratulations to them. And we got Ambergon. Ambergon was a winner of the Venture Challenge last spring. Yeah, I have to move on, I know, but there's so much I want to tell. They also raised a substantial seed funding, although they don't want to talk about this at this moment. And then there's a couple of more that raised growth money. So I won't go into the details. And of course, everybody saw the Breathomics breath analyzer in the news. So we can do this thanks to our partners. And there's one new name, NWO. So one big change that has happened over the year is that we are now a program organized by NWO. So the Venture Challenge has become an official instrument of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. It's used as a blueprint for other top sectors on how to run a startup program. As a consequence, it's also organized now by NWO. For most of the people in the room, they didn't experience too much of it, but I can tell you, for me, as organizer, some things have changed. Luckily, we also still have our 2 sponsors, Loyes & Loeff and Pivot Park, and they make it possible that we hand out these prizes here today. So now I'm really going to go to the startups. One last thing. So one of the consequences of the Venture Challenge being organized by NWO is that we also have to work with their timelines. And they're a bit different than we are used to. So there will be another Spring Venture Challenge next year. But the application deadline will already be in January, even though we won't start until April. So I would like to call upon everybody who's looking here, if you know somebody who could benefit from the Venture Challenge, who wants to start a company or recently started and would like to get connected to investors, make sure you point them towards the Venture Challenge. It'll open December 3rd. You can go to nwo.nl/VC, not before because it's not on the dates. The dates are not on there yet. You can go to Life Science at Work. You will find the dates of the workshop. Make sure that during the Christmas holiday, they write an application and submit it early next year. Okay, so now I'm done talking. Let's go to the teams. So we have 2 editions of the Venture Challenge. Normally what we'll do, we'll get the teams up on stage. They present for 1 minute before I announce the winner. This time, we're not allowed to do it like that. So we asked all the teams to record a 1-minute video pitch. So we're going to show first the video pitches of the summer edition. I'll announce the winner, and then we'll do the whole thing again for the fall edition. So let's roll with the pitches.
Hi, I'm Nick and I'm with Scope Biosciences. Treatment and containment of an infectious disease starts with diagnostics. And for accurate results, we currently rely on PCR in centralized laboratories, giving results in days, when often you want the results right now. The COVID pandemic highlights the need for fast diagnostics that give answers on the spot. And at Scope Biosciences, we have the answer. We're developing an on-site molecular diagnostic solution with laboratory accuracy that provides results within 30 minutes. And we do this using CRISPR-Cas. We validated this test on over 120 patient samples from the Amsterdam COVID testing location. Our results are on par with the golden standard, but vastly reduced time to diagnosis. And this platform technology is not restricted to COVID. It can be applied in a wide variety of fields, from veterinary to food to other healthcare applications. We are looking for seed investment to take this technology out of the university. Join us in a diagnostic revolution.
Hello, my name is Gerard Boeing and I'm the CEO of PatientCure. PatientCure develops gene therapies for common cardiac arrhythmias and cardiomyopathies using an innovative precision approach. Our medical products offer patients who suffer from severe morbidity and mortality superior treatment over established implantable and medical therapies, and a cure for patients that are currently untreatable. Our in vivo validated gene therapies are injected directly into a small region of the heart using a simple, minimally invasive procedure. Using non-dilutive funding, PatientCure has developed proprietary technologies to support a portfolio of products. As we move ahead, we expect to secure a Series A investment to advance the technology and complete phase 1/2 clinical testing. PatientCure's team builds on a long-standing track record with highly experienced clinicians and scientists. With PatientCure's unique platform and excellent team, it is our vision to become a world leader in cardiac gene therapy.
Hi, I'm Chris, founder of Medical VR. Medical VR enables lung-sparing surgery for lung cancer patients through our VR and AI-based software. In the PulmoVR platform, surgeons can simulate the surgery on a digital twin of the patient. So far, over 20 patients have been successfully treated with PulmoVR, and it's structurally being implemented at our launching customer, the Erasmus MC. Before lung cancer surgery, the surgeons need to recreate a 3D representation based on 2D CT images. This is an extremely difficult task. Due to conventional imaging modalities, a whole lung lobe needs to be removed for a small stage 1 tumor. Through PulmoVR, only a small segment can be removed, saving over 50% healthy lung tissue. A trial product is currently available. We hope to launch a fully CE certified product in the summer of next year. For more information, please reach out to info@medicalvr.eu and don't forget to follow our LinkedIn page. Thank you.
Over 2.6 million patients visit a general practitioner with a urinary tract infection every year in the Netherlands alone. Given the symptoms, the GP is next burdened with making the right diagnosis of the infection and subsequently providing the correct antibiotic therapy if any is needed at first place. However, these tasks can be particularly challenging because current methods are either not reliable, such as a dipstick, or have a long turnaround time of over 2 days in the case of culturing. We at Channex Medtech are developing a novel diagnostic device that can determine if the patient is indeed suffering from a bacterial infection and propose the correct treatment choice to the GP for each patient individually within 4 hours. By helping GPs make properly informed treatment choices, we first and foremost help patients with bladder infections, eliminate unnecessary antibiotic administration, and reduce antibiotic resistance rates. Thank you.
Yes, so I forgot to mention something, that is that the audience is also able to vote who they feel should be the winner of these venture challenges. It won't change actually the outcome because we have a jury who has looked at the venture plans of these teams, who listened to them for 10 minutes, another 20 minutes Q&A with each of the teams. But it would be nice to see at least which of the teams gets the audience award. We have live voting here. think that's my cue. Yes. Okay, so interesting to see what's going to happen over there. So I'm going to reveal who, besides the audience winner, which you can all follow, is going to be the Venture Challenge winner according to the jury. And the winner of the, see if I have the right check. Yes, the Venture Challenge Summer Edition, where are the guys, is PatientCure. Congratulations. I'm going to hand out a check. You have to look into the camera over there. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Tom Vrielink, and I would like to talk to you about our venture, Second B. Second B is creating a novel in vitro brain-on-a-chip technology to predict drug efficacy for Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is the most rapidly growing neurodegenerative disease, and even though it has been known since 1817, no definitive cure has been found. Creating clinical efficacy is notoriously difficult, with failure rates of over 70%. Our technology aims to reduce this failure rate, facilitating the creation of novel treatments for Parkinson patients. Our platform is based on letting neurons grow in their 3D morphology, while also keeping them in a standardized neuronal network. This combines the natural state of neurons with the ability to create simple readouts and easy integration into drug screening pipelines. We have validated the technology for this, but we are currently looking for an investment to implement the use of stem cells and do final experiments on the accuracy of our predictions. Would you like to know more?
Did you know that in your lifetime, on average, you will break 2 bones and that half of these fractures are treated by a surgeon? We have such a surgeon on our team. His name is Bas, and he uses a metal plate and screws to fixate these fractures. It's important that these screws have the right length. Too short and the implant will break off. If they're too long, they will poke into sensitive tissue, causing you as a patient pain and potentially corrective surgery. Now, the problem is that the current device to measure the screw length often gives the wrong value in 8% of cases. And 19 out of the 20 surgeons we interviewed say they want a better instrument. Now, we're Slam Ortho, and we developed a sensor that fits between the drill machine and drill bit, and it measures the correct screw length while the surgeon is drilling. This reduces OR time with 10%, prevents implant waste, and reduces patient risk. Our team has a diverse background, and we want to bring this product to the surgeons. Can you help us with contacts within hospitals? We love to speak to you, so that with Slam Ortho, we can make it a pleasure to measure.
There are more than 500 different neuromuscular disorders described so far, collectively affect over 700,000 patients in Europe and the US. Overall, these exceed $46 billion in healthcare expenses just in the US, which is driving an enormous effort into the development of effective therapies. However, 97% of these drugs fail to reach market approval. This is largely caused by current preclinical research models, which are unable to provide reliable information about drug efficacy before drug candidates go on into clinical development. MyoNovum instead provides with an alternative preclinical testing approach, which integrates induced pluripotent stem cells and engineering technology to provide a more reliable evaluation of drug candidates and improve the success of drugs in clinical development. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you soon.
Lately, our world has been turned upside down. The same still happens when you hear you have a cancer. Nothing remains the same, and one is looking for new options. We are NanoUnique, and we offer a novel technology to make new cancer drugs. We are also turning things upside down. We are using a technology that reverses the traditional way of antibody making, and therefore we can find targets on cancer cells that are hidden for other companies. We have put these nanobodies in a library. You can visit it to find the nanobody that fits you. Or you can give us your material and we provide you with a panel of unique and highly selective antibodies. Cancer is a moving target and therefore patients need new drugs all the time. We have shown that we can make unique nanobodies for prostate and bladder cancer. And these nanobodies find hidden metastases for treatment. So have your world turned upside down. Contact us.
When you're researching a new drug to bring to the market, you are completely dependent on 2 data streams. Firstly, your lab results describe the efficacy and safety, and secondly, documentation provides a backbone of truth for your lab results. Documentation, however, is still completely reliant on human input, and human input is prone to introduce human error. Panorama Labs is building a new class of lab equipment. We are making devices that specifically measure and document the actions that introduce error into your documentation. For instance, by attaching a panorama beacon to your mechanical micropipettes, all aspects of every pipette step are completely documented without requiring any human input from lab personnel. If you are a lab manager or a QA manager that's interested in automating these kinds of documentation streams, please connect with us at panorama.bio/DLSC, and maybe together we can build a panoramic view of your laboratory.
I guess you can still vote for the audience award. Oh, it's happening already. Okay, so I'm going to reveal the winner according to our jury, and the winner of this fall edition of the Venture Challenge, where are you guys, is Slamorto. Congratulations, guys. There you go.
Congratulations to both Slamorto with a pleasure to measure. I like the quote that you had there. And also PatientCure. And Kichen, it must feel so great to see all this work come together and finally be able to give them the prizes. Isn't that so?
It's the best moment of the year.
Well, thank you for presenting it to us here. So we've come to the end of the first part of today. We'll come back in about 14 minutes at 30 minutes past 3 for the rest of our presentation. So we have a quick break now. Please come back. After the break, we have a super interesting lineup. Why small changes matter in the prevention of the onset of disorders by lifestyle changes. Karen Verzijde, Hanno Peil, Jan Dekker, Anja Gerritsen, and a keynote by Hanneke Schuitenmaker, which is a virology professor. So I'm really curious to hear her story there. So please come back to us. Take a short break, 13 minutes. We'll see you back. Thank you so much. Hello again, and welcome to the new people who are joining us now for the second part of the 16th Dutch Life Science Conference. I'll be your host at the second part as well. My name is Eline Vrijland van Beest. I have a background in the medical technology, now CEO of a biotech startup and venture partner for Tuya Capital and Blue Sparrows. So in this room with me here today, we have 30 people, but I know that there are over 550 of you that have been signing up and are watching from your homes. Welcome. I'm happy that you're joining us here. We have an exciting lineup. This afternoon, we'll be talking about the prevention of the onset of disorders by lifestyle changes and why small changes matter. To get all of you involved in the presentations that we'll see this afternoon, we would like to ask you to download the Mentimeter app. You are able to ask questions during the presentation, and we'll run through the questions after the presentations. There's no room to answer all of them, but the presenters will be answering them after the event, and you'll be able to find the answers online. So please do ask your questions. Let's keep this interactive, and we'd like to hear your opinions as well. I would like to give the stage to Karen Verzijde for our first presentation this afternoon. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Eline, and welcome to this session on the future of care. In this time of viral pandemics, it is of the essence to stop by as well on this other pandemic, the pandemic of lifestyle-related diseases.
Karen, die geeft nu een
In this session, we
presentatie.
will commence this phenomenon from a scientific, a commercial, and a legal point of view. For me, the session goes back to the year of 2008 when I was working here in Leiden at the Leiden Medical University as an in-house counsel. And at that time, Hanno Peil was appointed as a professor of diabetology. His inaugural speech had the title, "In the Country of Meat, Croquette and Buttercake." In essence, he stated that we're having too many of those, too little exercise, and this results into lifestyle-related diseases for many of us. Hanno will comment in this session on this phenomenon from based on his years of experience in the clinic, and also from the point of view of Lifestyle for Health, which is a research consortium that was initiated by LUMC and TNO. Where Hanno is working on lifestyle-related diseases, Jan Dekker, CEO of Food First Network, is dealing with this from a, I would say, commercial point of view. And this is a service, an online platform offering solutions to improve your nutrition, your exercise, your relaxation, and sleep. Jan is working together with medical doctors who provide in a very accessible way, via movies, via practical tips, ways to improve your health. Now, the common thread in the activities of both Lifestyle for Health and Food First Network is, from a legal perspective, that they process personal data. Health data, that is. And this is what I would like to comment on. I'm a lawyer, after all, in the few moments ahead. And when we were preparing this session, I was told, well, this is something slightly different than we will comment on. We're talking about the future of care, right? Yes, indeed, we do. But it is for a reason that I chose this topic, because I note on a daily basis in our practice that not each research organization or company is fully aware of the legal parameters applicable to such an important topic. And with the rise of health platforms, of tech platforms, but also when having clinical activities, data processing is under serious scrutiny. So I take this opportunity to share my insights and thereby draw on practical experience in working with scientific groups and also with companies like those of Food First Network. The applicable framework to processing personal data is the General Data Protection Regulation. I think many of you will have heard about this piece of legislation simply because it's difficult not to have heard anything about it. It creates a common European framework that is applicable in all EU member states, but in addition, there is some room for maneuver for the member states regarding particular topics, like, for instance, scientific research and also processing genetic data. When we have a look at processing health data, personal data, both in a clinical setting and in a commercial setting, there's a difference between what I would call regular personal data and special groups of data. Health data belong to the former part. And I've given you here the definitions of both health data and genetic data. I'm not going to repeat them, but I would like to make clear here that specific rules apply if you process these data. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail. If you process these regular data, you should have an applicable legal ground to do so, which could be the contract that is being in place between you and the data subject, or the legitimate interest of the data controller that he has to process these data. However, when you are processing health data, the situation is slightly different, meaning that you can't do that unless you have an appropriate legal basis. And for scientific research, the mere fact of doing research alone could be sufficient. However, if you are doing this in a commercial context, usually it comes down that you need the explicit consent of the data subject. Okay, we're looking at processing of personal data in a scientific setting first. As I mentioned, it can be sufficient that you do this scientific research to process these data. However, that should be really necessary, meaning that there's no way around it. You do need these data. And if we take the example of a clinical trial, this is the most obvious one. Obviously, you need the data of the subjects involved. Some further conditions apply, and one of those is that it would be very complicated to actually obtain the consent of the data subjects involved. Now, you can imagine when doing a clinical trial in, I would say, pre-COVID setting, patients were seen by the medical doctors and they gave them the pertinent information and also asked them for consent. We've seen in COVID times that this happens more and more online, and it would be really difficult to demonstrate that this would not be possible. So basically, also for doing scientific research, you need the explicit consent of the data subjects involved. So what does that mean? I have mentioned in a commercial setting, but please bear in mind that this might apply as well in a scientific setting. It means, first of all, that the consent should be freely given. There has been some debate that in a clinical setting, when there is a different position, when you have a look at a medical doctor and a patient, that it might be difficult for a patient to give his freely consent. Nevertheless, it is still the most safest harbor to rely on this consent, also when processing personal data in a health context. A second condition is that this consent should be very specific. And this means that the data subject, or you and I, should really know what it is about. What is going to happen to my data? For what purpose will they be used? In a third place, and then it comes close to clinical trials, the consent given should be really an informed consent. So also what you should mention as a data controller is that if any third parties are involved, who are they? For what purposes exactly are they processing the data? Will they stay in Europe or will they also be transferred abroad? All those type of things you should inform the data subject about. Finally, the consent should also be unambiguous. And this really touches upon consent provided in a commercial setting. Quite often when you benefit from a commercial service, you should tick the box in order to demonstrate that you agree that your personal data will be processed. However, it is of the essence for a data controller operating in a commercial setting that you actually document that you have this consent, meaning that you should be able to produce a printout if, for instance, the data subject requests so, or the public authorities, that a proper consent that fulfill all these criteria has actually been given. One slide on the difference between informed consent in a clinical setting and in a data processing setting. For clinical entities, this is not always so obvious, but the main difference is that consent in the context of a clinical trial relates to the participation of to a study, meaning that you could have, well, the actual product, but also the placebo, whereas consent in a data protection setting really relates to processing your personal data. My conclusions. The future of care will require more health research, and I think we also need platforms like the ones of a Food First Network. This implies the processing of personal data, mostly health data. Please know the applicable parameters from the GDPR and note that if you're operating in a clinical setting, you do need to satisfy these criteria as well. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You can stay on stage because we do have some questions for you that are coming through on Mentimeter. Leon, the floor is yours.
Just one, how to arrange second use of health data best so reuse of data is possible, more efficient, enriched, etc. Are there good examples? So the question is depicted on the screen.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you, Leon. Yeah, secondary use means that you use the data for another purpose than for which the consent was initially provided. There's basically two options. In a clinical setting, if you can anticipate that personal data will be used for instance, a closely related medical field, you can include that into your informed consent. In a commercial setting, if it's really going to be something different, this secondary use, well, the royal way, as to speak, would be that you go back to the data subject. You could also consider or obtain advice on the scope of the consent for which it was given, but you can't stretch it completely if the secondary use means that you're going to do something completely different.
All right.
Thank
And
you.
since we don't have any questions coming in, I'm a little disappointed of you at home. Please do come with questions for the next presentation, though. I do have a question for you here. What would be the most common item that is overlooked when processing health data?
In a clinical setting, if we talk about a multi-center clinical trial, we see that the academic centers usually like to be or insist to be joint controllers with the sponsors. The sponsors do not always like that for potentially obvious reasons. So you should have some kind of practical arrangements that, yes, the centers can be controllers, but only regarding the data of the study in which they are involved.
Mm-hmm.
In a commercial setting, I would say, I think I briefly touched upon that in my presentation, make sure that you actually record that you have the consent and that you can reproduce it.
Okay, thank you very much. Leon, do we have new questions coming in?
Second question. With whom should patients sign consent for data processing? With the sponsor?
Informed consent is usually the task of the party who is executing the clinical trial. So in Dutch, that would be the sponsor is de verrichter, it would be the medical staff. And usually this was done in a physical meeting. We now see more and more that this is also achieved in an online setting.
And do you have any tips for doing that online? It sounds really efficient.
Yeah, well, make a very clear form, which is clearly understandable by the patients or the healthy volunteers.
Okay. Okay, well, Karen, thank you very much for your presentation and the clear answers. I don't see anything else coming in, so please do drop your questions for the next presentation because this was an empty board here. So look at the presentation and think, what questions do I have? Place it in the Mentimeter. You can do that during the presentation. I would like to go to the next speaker, which is Hanno Peil. He's a professor in diabetology. Please come. We're going to go on Zoom. I'm sorry. So we're going to go live into Zoom into his presentation. Hanno.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Us?
Can you hear me? I hear you.
Yes.
You can.
We can.
And can you see my screen?
We can see your screen as well. Thank you very much.
Great, great. Okay, then I guess we can start. So good afternoon, everyone. Lifestyle medicine, what is it and why is it so much required for our future healthcare? First of all, this slide shows the percentage of the Dutch population by age group who have one or more chronic disorders. We get sick on a massive scale in this country, and I will argue that our healthcare system is not fit to deal with this huge problem. In fact, the roots of our system are in the 19th century, and the system is clearly designed to treat the disease of that era. However, the nature of disease has considerably changed over the last century, and we failed to adapt our healthcare system. Now, what do I mean by that? In the 19th century, we were primarily faced with infectious disease and accidents. Now, what do you do in a case like that? You obviously wait until something happens. You go to the doctor prescribes a pill or performs an operation, and the problem is basically solved. And this is because these diseases are very simple unifactorial diseases with a simple solution. However, today we have these non-communicable chronic diseases, and these are very complex multifactorial systems diseases. As an example, you see in the right part of the slide what we currently know about the biochemistry of type 2 diabetes as a prototype of a non-communicable disease. And as you can see, this is a very, very complex systems disorder with many biochemical pathways getting disrupted. And we still live with the illusion that we can treat a disease like that with pills. And why is that an illusion? Well, there's two main reasons. The first is that these pills usually target just one of those many biochemical pathways. So the majority of the patients who enter my office use like 6, 7, 8 different pills to correct all these errors in their biochemistry. These pills all have their side effects and they interact with each other. So nobody in the world can actually tell me whether the pills keep on doing what they should do in concert when they are given, when they are prescribed together. So polypharmacy is a real problem in clinical practice. And yet this is not the main reason why I think that pills will not solve the problem of chronic and non-communicable disease. The main reason is that pills actually do not address the root cause of these disorders. They mainly repair the damage that has been done by the factors I'm going to talk about. Because what do we know? And as long as those driving, damage driving factors are not addressed, we're basically mopping the floor with the tap wide open in clinical care. So what do we know about the etiology, the development of these disorders? Well, disease is caused by tissue damage. Aging is inevitably associated with tissue damage, while our genes are involved in tissue repair. So interactions between aging, the aging process, and our genes definitely are involved in the generation of tissue damage, eventually causing chronic disease. However, it is a real misperception to think that the aging process is the major issue here, because there's many components of our way of life that also induce tissue damage. From left above, counterclockwise, chronic stress, continuous inactivity, smoking, too short, bad quality sleep, alcohol, toxins are really everywhere, and we eat too much of the wrong food. And one can ask the question, how important are these factors actually versus aging and genes? Well, there's interesting data from various parts of the world illustrating the key role of the lifestyle and environment. For example, the island of Nauru in the Pacific in 1952, there's 0%, virtually no diabetes. Again, as an example of a chronic disorder, there's virtually no diabetes at Nauru. 50 years later, almost half the population has diabetes. And this is obviously not because these people suddenly grew older or their genes have changed in those 50 years. No, it's because the island has changed and people are living a completely different life at this time. And there's similar examples in various other parts of the world where diabetes is strongly associated with lifestyle and environment. In fact, without that environment, there's virtually no diabetes. So we know for a long time now, and these are data from the journal Science from 2002, almost 20 years ago, we know for a long time that these chronic disorders can be prevented by changing our lifestyle. And these are estimates showing that in between 70 and 90% are potentially be prevented by change of lifestyle. And only the last couple of years, I would say the last 5 to 10 years, we now see that even if you're sick, if you have one of those disorders, it is an absolute requirement to address these lifestyle factors that drive tissue damage to treat that disorder. And to illustrate that, I brought you a patient history beautifully showing what I'm just telling you. I would like to introduce Wim Tilburgs. Wim was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 14 in 2001. He was prescribed metformin according to protocol, which stabilized but not normalized his glucose levels. In the course of the following years, his blood glucose steadily rose, which required the prescription of an additional drug to control his levels, in addition to drugs for hypercholesterolemia and hypertension. Despite all these drugs, in 2014, his general practitioner advised him to take insulin because his blood glucose was still not in control. Wim started using insulin with the result that 1 year later, in 2015, he used 200 units of insulin a day, and his blood glucose levels were still not in control. At that point, his son came to him and he said, "Dad, listen, if you go on like this, you won't see me finish my studies." Wim, you decided to take a completely different approach of your disease. What did you do?
I found out that I needed a lifestyle change to help me manage my disease.
And what exactly did you change?
I did change, first of all, my food intake. I cut all the sugars and starchy carbohydrates and also the highly processed fats and replaced them with healthy fats and real natural foods.
And that was your first approach. So what happened when you did that?
I knew I had to check my insulin levels, and I found out that I could stop using insulin within 2 days. If not, I would get hypoglycemic. So I stopped after 2 days. I stopped using all my medicines. And
you used 200 units of insulin, and you stopped the insulin treatment in 2 days. Yes. After changing your diet.
Yes.
And you also stopped the rest of your medication.
Yes.
The drugs for cholesterol and for hypertension.
I still took metformin 1 month longer.
Okay. And your blood glucose level normalized.
Yes, my blood glucose, and I got back energy, so I could really start to move again.
Okay.
So I started to increase my physical activity.
Right.
And with the increasing and I found out that I also got a better day and night rhythm. I started sleeping earlier and rose, so I also changed my day and night rhythm.
Right. And what happened with your body weight?
Yeah, it was amazing. I lost the first month, I lost 10 kilos. And in 5 month times, I lost 40 kilograms body weight. I was in a weight, since I didn't have this weight since I was 25.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did you feel?
I felt reborn. I still do feel that this way. I felt 30 years younger. I was energy. I had, it was like a fog going out of my brain. It had, like the sky, it cleared, and yeah.
Right. And this is approximately 3 years ago. How are you now?
I'm still 3 years now without any medications. My HbA1c is still is around 5%, and yeah, I'm cured more or less.
You don't take any drug?
I don't take any drugs. I sport all day. I feel 30 years younger. I am reborn. It's like a miracle.
That's really great. So, and what did you actually miss in the office of your general practitioner? Why didn't it happen earlier?
He was not aware of any lifestyle protocol. He never studied this kind of lifestyle treatment. He just studied what kind of diagnose with medications he should give. That's what's the protocol. Lifestyle was not in his vocabulary.
Wim, I would like to thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome.
Why doesn't it? Something wrong now. Oh, here we go. So I think the video speaks for itself. And this is Wim with his wife before the intervention, and this is them after. And as you can see, his wife, she joined him, and interestingly, she has rheumatoid arthritis. And after the intervention, she doesn't use any medication anymore. So we need lifestyle medicine. What is it? It's not an alternative to what I call traditional medicine. Lifestyle interventions need to be integrated into traditional care. It is a real prerequisite for efficient healthcare in the future. Now, what do we need for that? Well, first of all, the patient needs to take center stage, because the patient is the only one who can change his or her lifestyle. And the patient needs to get responsibility for health and disease. And to take that responsibility, patients need to be very, very well informed. They need to be, in fact, educated about the nature of their disease and about what they can do and should do themselves to make that disease better. Now, this does not mean that we leave patients alone. In fact, we know that it's very, very difficult to change lifestyle in the context of our current society. And so we need lifestyle coaches. They will be an essential part of the healthcare in the future, I think. And we also need online support, like Food First Network that Jan is going to tell you about in a minute, that Food First Network offers. And also, patients need to be able to measure their own health parameters by e-health tools. They need to be able to measure their glucose in response to what they eat. They need to measure they need to be informed about their blood pressure, their weight, etc. They must be able to measure that at home. So e-health tools will be a hugely important tool in the future, I think. Now, what are doctors for then? Well, I think doctors need to diagnose. They need to, obviously, they need to inform their patients, educate their patients, and inspire them to change their way of life. And then checking, obviously, and prescribing drugs if necessary. And then checking, obviously, if the intervention is effective enough. And finally, then, we need to, doctors, in terms of diagnosis, but also in terms of treatment, we now focus in the current healthcare paradigm, we focus on the biology of our patients. And this is not enough. We need to take a much more holistic approach, including behavior and also spirituality and socioeconomic environment, because these are very important determinants of our behavior. So what I wanted to tell you in this very short period of time, I think the disease burden has changed over the last century, and we should adapt our healthcare system to solve the problems that these diseases give us. And our way of life is at the root of many of the non-communicable diseases of today, and lifestyle medicine is really required to address those root causes. And therefore, patient empowerment is really key, and modern doctors are advisors, no more and no less. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Hanno. I'm going to really quickly, we have 1 minute left for one question, I guess, for you there. I'm going to go over to Leon to see if you had any good questions from you guys at home for this presentation. Leon.
Yeah, there are a few good questions, but a short one. Isn't it dangerous to stop medication for a chronic condition abruptly? How will a patient know that it's okay to stop or not with their medication?
Yes, of course. Never stop any drug without consulting your doctor, obviously, because it can be dangerous. In case of type 2 diabetes is an example of a disease where stopping medication is often possible. And there's many other chronic disorders that are also amenable to lifestyle intervention. And for example, rheumatoid arthritis is another example. But never, ever do that without consulting your physician, because obviously it can be dangerous.
Yeah, maybe another question. Sorry. How do we effectively change patient mentality?
Yeah, that's the key question, I would say. And it's not only patient mentality, it's also doctor's mentality. It's actually social mentality. We have to switch minds to really, all of us need to be responsible for our own health. And this is a process that will take a lot of time. But if we really want to solve the problems with our health and in healthcare, we need to think of ways to establish this. And I know it's very, very difficult, but nevertheless, I think we all know that healthcare costs rise to the roof of what we can do, and if we don't change our way of managing this, it's going to end up in a disaster, I'm sure. So at a certain point we have to, and I think we have to start now.
Thank you very much, Hanno Peil. Your message has been conveyed loud and clearly. Thank you so much. We're going to go for the next presentation to Jan Dekker from the First Food Network. Welcome on stage.
Thanks very much. So we are facing serious problems, you see. And, I'm sorry. And Hanno Peil is one of our doctors on the platform. My name is Jan Dekker. I am not the CEO, but I'm now the medical director. I don't know if it's more important, the title, but it's still solving the problems here in the Netherlands. We're going to be sick, very, very, very sick. Last year, Albert Heijn, one of the biggest food retailers in the Netherlands, took over this platform to build together with us. It's the biggest and most reliable platform in the Netherlands. So we are facing it for the next 3 years, working on that. And last Monday, we signed up with another company who was investing and doing the insurances for our healthcare insurances. So working on the platform means that you need a lot of money, and it's not less than 5 million, you need far more, because changing lifestyle, that's very, very, very difficult. We're working now for 1 year on diabetic research. What does one need to do when you have diabetic? For example, what you saw in the movie was what Hanno shows us. It's very, very difficult to change your lifestyle. It's one of the most things in life. It's very, very difficult to change. But where do we come from? What was the reason that we are so sick now, not only in the country as the Netherlands, but still in the world? Well, I'm going to show you, because using 4 pillars of life, food, move, relax, and sleep, are the most important. but we came from a whole other perspective. Self-regulation in the world means that the industry makes the choices, what we see, what we eat, if we smoke or not. We go back in time. Just an example. Can you believe this? This is where we came from. Your doctor smokes, so it's normal, everyone smokes. I got just another one, I got a lot more, but I show you just two of them. This one. Putting sugar in to our children. And why do we have the youngest customers in business? Yeah, be proud of it, but we can't allow it in these times, in this decade, to do it this way, because we already know what sugar is doing. Yeah, what's this then? This is what we are facing here in the Netherlands, and I think we are facing it everywhere in the world. A lot of people are so tired. Sometimes tired of being alone, but also tired of being depressed, feeling down. A lot of young people here in the Netherlands have burnout type of feelings. And that's very serious. And that means that we need to step into another world, and to step in, to be honest about what's important. And it all starts with food. Because before exercise, first, food is the most important. What's coming in is coming out, and you are the food you eat. No more than that. And what we see is the problem: smoking, eating unhealthy, highly processed food. That's what industry did. Bad sleeping. Over 1 million people in the Netherlands swallow every night their sleeping pills, and it will not work. Even the pills for depression, 60% of these pills will not work and have a lot of side effects. Yeah, what's in your mind? A lot of fat, sugar? Or on your left side, you're a vegetable, fresh food thinker? Or a little mix, and that could be not the problem. I want to show you an animation film. It's made in the United States, and it's all about the market in the United States, what kind of problems we are facing there. And it's related to the Dutch market as well, and European market, and it's for every country the same. Let's look to the film.
Food drives us. People make over 200 food-related choices a day. These choices are driven by a complex combination of biological, psychological, social, and environmental factors. An increasing amount of people consume an unhealthy diet. They eat too much, and their diet is unbalanced and unsustainable. At the same time, the growing elderly populations are more vulnerable to malnutrition. This causes an alarming rise in chronic diseases and cost to society. Science has given us valuable insights to support society towards a healthy and sustainable diet. Nutrition can reduce the risk of chronic disease, can make people feel better despite having a disease, and even cure disease. For instance, trans fatty acids have been highly reduced in processed food since we discovered that they increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Consuming liquid sugar makes us feel less satisfied than solid sugar and increases the risk of being overweight. This resulted in governmental advice to limit consumption of soft drinks and fruit juices. With a healthy diet and lifestyle, medication for diabetes type 2 can be reduced or even quit. However, there are still crucial gaps in our knowledge to tackle the societal challenge of nutrition and health. For example, we need to better understand the interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors. More insight is needed on the role of diet regarding cognitive function and performance. Science showed that educating people about healthy food is not enough to change behavior. The focus on the future will have to integrate biology and behaviour towards more personalised interventions and advice. In JPI Healthy Diet for a Healthy Life, governments join forces to increase the impact of research to work towards a healthy society. It's time to invest in a healthier future.
So it's not easy to change your lifestyle, that's what we see. And when we look into the cost here in the Netherlands, we are facing up to 100 billion euros of cost. And we can afford that. So what's politics doing? Not enough. So we have to change our behavior and we have to change our view for the future, the near future. To bring back lifestyle into our lives and the importance of lifestyle. To stay long time without diseases, happy life, happy future, and not using a lot of pills. And we see that the chronic diseases are going down from 65 now to 50 years old, and maybe younger. And what we see that children with cancer who survived at their 20s also facing a lot of problems. All related to food, relaxation, sleep, and move. So the importance of lifestyle is far more than we thought it was the last 25 years. This is our doctor. And what is he telling? Or even what was he studying? Medicine. And the most important medicine he did, if he was lucky, or she, 20 hours in 4 years. Food-related study. That's it. And our best medicine ever always will be food. I hope you have a healthy, fit doctor who will talk to you about lifestyle. But most of them say, I don't have time. 10 minutes, you come in, how are you doing? Oh yes, a little bit pain here, okay, diclofenac, okay, that's it. Prescription, and you go. So what Hanno told, and I agree upon that, is that a huge platform, what can bring all the knowledge to the people, to the patients, is very important. Reliable, and you can trust on that platform. That's where I stand for, and that's where the platform stands for. Always the right information. So that means joining forces with people, companies, to bring back lifestyle in where it needs to be, on the list of every doctor in this world, to tell about the best medicine ever, food. Okay, but what then? 80% consciously enjoy healthy. As much unprocessed food as possible. And 20% consciously unhealthy enjoyment and no guilty pleasures. Eat that chocolate bar and don't feel guilty, because guilty pleasures don't exist, even in your mind. Maybe you can skip it the next time, but that's up to you. And take some chocolate is no problem. This is a whole different world. Our children, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to teach them? How are we going to help them to survive chronic diseases and to stay into, as long as possible, many years of being healthy? We have to teach our children, and we have to learn them cooking, because I already knew, before I started this platform, I did research in Germany and in Portugal and in the Netherlands. A lot of children want to learn cook. So that's one of our other goals, and we're going to go to try find out the way to learn them cooking. In this digital world, it's very easy to do. They're standing in their own kitchen, and we are coming from our kitchens. Well, 460 before Christ. And this means that food is your best medicine ever, and it still will be for always. I hope you're sleeping well. you exercise well, you eat well, and you relax well. Then you stay for a long time without sickness, if it's possible. And we have to change this world into more a lifestyle world and to bring knowledge to the people, and that's what we're going to do. Thank you very much for your attention and stay healthy, everybody. Thank you very much.
Kan jij aan de kop van de tafel gaan staan?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much for this very inspiring. Can you stand on the?
Oh yeah, okay, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
1.5,
it's,
One
yeah,
and a
it's
half.
1.5 meters
I
here.
thought it was centimeters. Okay, no, it's okay.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation here. I do see a lot of questions coming in for you.
Oh yes.
So Leon, could you maybe share some of them?
There are many questions about the involvement of Albert Heijn as expected. Will Albert Heijn stop selling candies, cookies, alcohol, Coca-Cola, and so on?
I have another question. Why? Why do they have to stop that? Because when you want a cookie, you eat a cookie. We're living in a free world, so everybody can pick up his own choices what to do. If you don't want to smoke, please don't buy cigarettes. So this is the easy way, and yeah, there is nothing wrong with cookies or a candy, but not a whole package in one time.
The other question, this one. Why did you choose a new platform instead of stimulating health insurance companies to reallocate resources to existing structures, like using the knowledge of dietitians?
Yeah, a lot of people are not visiting dietitians. And what we see now, or here in the Netherlands, that there is a coming up of lifestyle coaches. So I think that a lot of dietitians maybe missed the bus. I don't know, but still there is a lot to do for them as well. A lot of them are changing into also in lifestyle coaches, dietist and lifestyle coach. Yeah. And I think there is a very, very big need in good information about diseases. We started with diabetic, we go on with cancer, we go on with obesitas, we go on with heart diseases. So we're still working on that. And the next 3 years, we have a lot of work to do to build in every good information with the best doctors available. For example, Hanno Peil, who wants to draw about the lines. And that is what we need. We need doctors and professors who want to draw about the lines, because that is what's necessary. Not to stay in the system, in the healthcare system, because there is a lot wrong in the system. Because you had to be sick, and that is their model of getting money. So that, yeah, we have to facing a lot of transitions in what we need now. Is
Okay,
that a good answer on the question or not?
another question, which is also actual. Fast food is usually cheap and easy to get, and eating healthy costs more energy. How do we flip that?
No, I don't know. Eating healthy is not the way that it costs more energy. If you eat healthy on the way the product is available, then it's more cheap than you want to eat strawberries in December. So that is a lot of difference. And healthy food is not expensive. That is one of the biggest jokes ever. And industry is more or less saying that healthy food is not expensive. More or less, unprocessed food is more expensive because they need a lot of more marketing and other things like that.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation again.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we're going to go to the second part of the session, which is focused on COVID-19 and developments in diagnostic tests, therapies, and vaccines. Still, Leon will be here to answer your questions, so please do fill them in on the Mentimeter app for the next presentation as well, which is going to be by Anja Gerritsen from Inatos Laboratories. Welcome on stage.
Ooh, this is tough. Can't see anything. Let me actually stand here. I still need some advice from Hanno, my husband as well. But I must say that COVID actually doesn't help in reducing the amount of stress in your life. And actually to avoid that, I mean, I've been CEO of Inetos now since 2012, coming from Organon, 18 years, drug development, etc. And I thought I want to do something completely different. So I started working on diagnostics with the idea, catch it early, make sure you catch whatever it is, in my case, infectious diseases, at a time that you can actually avoid all the long-term problems. Let me see, here's the flipper. And we started with Q fever. We work a lot on Lyme disease. And since March, we actually started working in a roller coaster that's called COVID-19. And it really has been a roller coaster. Initially, I mean, our background is really immune responses. So we looked at immune responses. We looked at antibodies and what was going on. But that was the start. At some point, we really learned that a lot of people are just focusing on the virus. And it's really interesting. I think it's the same thing as with food. All these things are connected. So our REVM tells you have to look at the virus. You have to avoid that you get new infections. But at the same time, they forget that some people actually had a disease and they may get really sick and they will have long COVID. And we don't worry about it. First, we only focus on that virus. And one of the things that we have started to do is make it much more comprehensive. So work in an integrated way on diagnostics. We started at the end in the immune response, but we also picked up on the infections using PCR. We also very recently started looking at viral proteins, which means, and it's an interesting thing because you may be infected, but you may actually not be infectious. And that makes finding that difference is really important. But then after that, again, people have an immune response. For some people, the immune response actually makes them really, really sick. So I think that's still a matter of debate, whether the people that end up in the ICU, whether they're sick of the virus or whether they're actually sick of their immune response. And again, maybe food and healthy lifestyles can help there a little bit. But what I see around me is not that people that are living extremely unhealthy are the only victims of COVID. Very young people that are very fit also get COVID, except that the ones that are older have a larger chance of dying from it. So if we look at the key aspects of COVID test, because that's what I wanted to talk about, you really have to distinguish between two things. And one is the biology, what are we measuring? And the other one is the technology. So what kind of format, what kind of readout, what kind of detection method? Do you want to have it automated? Do you want to have it in a lab where the microbiologist can actually monitor everything? Or do you actually want to have a test that you can run in your own kitchen? For me, that biology has always been very important. Do we measure the virus? Do we measure the protein of the virus? Do we look at host responses? Which one are you looking for? And it's really tough. I mean, it's not easy. A lot of people think that all of this is easy, but infectious diseases is something that we've forgotten about and that we actually haven't learned about. I mean, maybe doctors get only 20 hours of food-related stuff in their life or in their education, but they probably get even less on infectious diseases. So it's really important that you get tests that are fit for purpose. You have to think first, what do I want to know? And then the next thing is, how are we going to do that as well as possible? Then if you look at infections, the RT-PCR, measuring RNA is the golden standard. Takes quite a long time, it's expensive, requires really skilled people, really expensive equipment as well. So there's a good business case for that. It needs no swabs, which are not very convenient, and it's really not very suitable for follow-up because once you're positive, you will remain probably positive for another 2 months. There are alternatives coming up now. TNO is developing a test using a different kind of amplification method, LAMP, and it's fast and it's cheap. This is actually something that everybody tells you. Everything is fast and cheap and it's very reliable, but it's actually not very easy. If I look what you need in a test street to actually use that technology, I'm not that enthusiastic about it. In France, they actually have something that is very similar. They made it easy, they say. They actually use saliva. It's maybe not that sensitive, but this is something you could actually do probably in your own kitchen. And I mean, I'm really interested in talking to the people from the Venture Challenge, because in the US as well, people are using CRISPR-Cas for novel diagnostics. And I think that those types of very quick assays are going to be the future. Coming back to being infected versus infectious, this is something that worldwide is coming up. People may have already be positive in the PCR, but they may not be able to infect people, or even afterwards, once your immune system has taken care of the virus, you will remain positive, but you're not infectious anymore. And this is something that, in terms of spreading the virus, is really important to realize. The really tricky bit is, if you look at the picture, let me see if this is actually, it's not a pointer. In the little red part, a PCR will be positive, the antigen test will not be positive. And that's what we want to measure. We want to measure protein of the virus. There will be a stretch of about 7 days, maybe 10 days, where people actually transmit that virus and infect everybody around them. But after that, PCR will remain positive, but you can go back to work and you have no problem. There's a guy at Harvard who's actually promoting this, and really, really rapidly. The whole problem is what you need is very frequent testing, twice a week. And recently, Hugo de Jonge said he was going in March. We would be able to test everybody in the Netherlands once a month. And I mean, that's really waste of money. Don't do it. If you do it twice a week, and otherwise, forget about the whole thing. The benefits is that you will take out people that are infectious very quickly, so they can't infect everybody else. And you can actually return to normalcy once that infectious period is over. You need no or very low-cost equipment, and it's easy to perform. And that has advantages, because if we want to do this big scale, you can't work with all sorts of specialists. I mean, we actually work with medical students who are smart and actually good enough to run these tests. But that should, at some point, it may actually be that easy that people can do them from their own home. So we picked one with a little instrument, not very expensive, but it has the advantage that you can actually record data. It's semi-quantitative, so you can see whether that peak is actually going up and down, but it's not completely necessary. And all these tests are so easy that even Hugo de Jonge can do them. This is always interesting, because at the moment, there's a lot of problems. I mean, we have a commercial we have a company which is by definition commercial, so we run these tests, and then the municipal health services are saying, okay, this can't be right, because they're not using the right safety measurements. Then, of course, we get a picture of Hugo, who is doing this without goggles, without gloves, without any training, without face shields. But in the end, I mean, you do need that. I mean, you do need a little bit of precaution to make sure that your personnel doesn't get sick. Then the good news actually is that it works. I mean, this is a very nice example of last week, so it's very fresh data from yesterday, where we had a person coming in last week on Thursday, negative in the antigen test, positive in the PCR. So we tested her 2 days later, and sky-high viral load. Another 2 days later, we saw actually declining the number of viruses. And yesterday, she was almost back to being negative. So if we look at what the RVM is saying, you have to stay in isolation for 7 days, that probably fits quite nicely. So I'm always happy with these examples where the theory and everything we believe is actually supported by data. So then we get to the next phase, and that's the immune system. The immune response for COVID is very complicated. And again, you have to know what you want to know. What is the question from, I won't call them patients, call them clients, because I mean, I hear people talking a lot about food and patients. Maybe it's not about, it's all about not becoming a patient, but just being a normal person. So we have all these complicated cells that make antibodies that respond to stimuli, and they respond to different parts of the virus. So what we've seen is that if we look at antibodies, the first thing we see is antibodies against the nucleocapsid protein. Those are the green things. They cover the RNA, but there's lots of them, but they're not that very useful. And then you have the antibodies that are directed against the spikes. So yellow ones are the spikes that are coming out, and those correlate much better with virus neutralization. But the most important thing is the little bit, the outer part of the spike protein, because that binds to ACE2, which is protein on the human cell, and that makes the virus go into the cell and replicate there. And we have that on a rapid test, an antibody test, but we also have a very cute assay these days, and it's called CPAS. It's like a virus neutralization test, but then you can run it in a 96 well plate with hundreds at the same time. So I think that is one of the really nice innovations of the last couple of months. And then, so what you see again is, what are we looking for? The antigen, the antibody, the subtypes. So we worked with the rapid antibody test. We did that actually from a camper, very cute, students running around the Netherlands, testing people everywhere in the Netherlands, because we actually couldn't find anyone to collect blood. People would say, why don't you do it in a blood sample? Yeah, if you can't find anyone to draw blood, you have to do it through a finger prick. No extensive lab skills required, very broadly applicable, easy, really easy. But do those antibodies last? So we followed a group of about 100 people in the northern part of Limburg, really bad area where they had, I think most of the families we talked to had at least one person dying, some actually 3. Lots of people sick, still sick. And we had 100 people that we followed over time in May, in July, and most recently the end of October. And what we see is that the antibodies are going down. And the interesting bit is that not all the antibodies are going down. The ones against nucleocapsid protein, where I said we're not so sure what use they are, they actually disappear. The ones against the spike protein remain much longer. But these virus neutralization antibodies, they are much more stable, they remain in your blood, and that's the part that we actually need. So I think that when we talk about antibody test, we can't say a serological test. There are tons of them. They measure different things. We have to know what we're measuring. And this CPAS test was developed in Singapore. So we got to talk to the people from, actually it was developed at the university there, then taken up by GenScript, who's doing also a lot of CAR-T and a lot of Casper technology. And it's species independent, so it's perfect for a study where you wanted to go into different species. It's by now it's already approved in Europe for a long time, but now also in the FDA approved for emergency use. It's highly scalable, and to my surprise, I mean, we started working with this in June or so, and it's easy. And in the Netherlands, nobody thinks about it. I mean, you can tell them we're used to our own assays. And this is one of the things that really surprised me in COVID time, where you would think that we're actually trying to solve the problem with all of us, that there's this huge division between hospitals, between the classic diagnostics labs, between startups that start something that's already there. There's very little discussion. If you look at the public health management, they actually don't want to talk to companies. I mean, we generated a ton of data, and we offered it to the RIVM and said, okay, please use it, because that will actually add to your validation. You're a company, we're not interested. And this is something that is, I think, really bad for our society. So the neutralizing antibodies are the ones that are induced by a natural immune response. Those are the ones that actually are the aim of vaccines. So we'll hear from Hanneke Schuit-Thematicus later on. And they're key in protection, and they're key in making sure that you don't get sick the next time. So my take-home messages, and after that I'll stop. diagnostics should be fit for purpose. High tech is not necessarily better than low tech. Actually, I like low tech because that's very accessible. At the moment, finding those infectious people is really important, but we also have to realize that a lot of people have been infected already and they're in a different state. And right now in the Netherlands, we're not measuring that. And once we start doing that, maybe people don't get as unhealthy as they are now. So we need to monitor the virus and we need to monitor the host. And I think that, I mean, what we always say, alleen samen krijgen we corona onder controle. That's true, but that accounts for, I think, everyone in the Netherlands and also public and private partnerships. So I hope you all stay strong, you all stay very healthy, and good food always helps to make you happy and
Thank you very much.
So, 0.
Thank you, Anja. I think we all had to laugh about your comment on Hugo de Jonge as our new standard for a test being foolproof there. I'm very curious. There must be loads of questions that have been coming in, Leon.
Yeah, there are a few questions. One question is, will there be a diagnostic test to confirm that one is protected from COVID after vaccination?
To be honest, I think that CPAS is the one to do. So I think that's the test one should use. I think that nobody's going to do it, at least not in the Netherlands, because they will think the vaccine is foolproof and it will help. And what we see is that there's a lot of individual variation. So some people have lost antibodies. They were high in March. They've lost it completely by now. Others have remained, still have after natural infection, still have very high levels of antibodies. And you can differentiate there as well. People that have had COVID already, maybe they just need half a dose of the vaccine, and that's enough. So, but I mean, my experience is that everybody says this is too expensive, whereas I think you can, since we don't know what the antibodies are doing and how long they last, you can prevent a lot of issues next year if you start measuring.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question, if RIVM doesn't use data from commercial sector, your company, why is that and what is their main data source?
They get the data from the microbiological lab. So one of their demands is that there has to be a physician, medical or clinical microbiologist in place. And I think that they're just scared as hell for commercial interference. They always think that a commercial company, a commercial lab only thinks about how can we make as much money rather than, I mean, I really think that only together we will actually get this under control. Mm-hmm. That's the premise also from commercial companies. I think that companies that have developed new tests will face that same scrutiny. Do you just want to make money, or are you actually trying to solve problems?
Actually, on that same note, how well is the cooperation between the public and the private sector in that sense?
I see very little. I see mainly people being scared. I mean, when we started with this, with our mobile labs driving around the Netherlands, and we really tried, we used our quality management system to put everything in place in a very short time. And I think that within a month, we had the inspection asking us what the hell we were doing. So, okay, we do this in a decent way. I mean, I gave them answers. I never got an answer back. So I still don't know whether what we submitted was acceptable. I've heard from other commercial labs that they had the same issue. And now the GGD's are going to report commercial test treats also to the inspection. And sometimes I'm just, when I'm really cynical, I say I want to have also a blacklist for things that go wrong at the GGD, but that's childish, so I won't do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Anja. And we're off to the next presentation, which is actually going to be our last one. This is our keynote lecture by Hanneke Schuitenmaker, and she's a professor in virology. I'm really curious to hear her opinion on all of the things that we've heard here today. And we're going to see her through Zoom. So we've come to the wrap up of today, and we're going to wrap up with a word cloud. So get your mobile phones or computers there for the Mentimeter. And the question that I have for you is, what did you appreciate most today? What did you appreciate most today? And I'm very curious to see the words that are going to pop up here. What did you appreciate most? What did you appreciate most, Leon?
Sorry. Yeah, I always like the young people, the young companies. So the Venture Challenge is always a highlight for me every year, and I'm very glad that we could do the award ceremony today. Because they are the future, actually, for new developments, new medicines, and so on. And of course, the last presentation of Hanneke was very impressive, and how you can develop in a very short time, with a lot of collaborations, with focus, and so on, a vaccine which we need very, very fast. And, and we also can learn a lot about that, and that will help us in the future.
Definitely. I'm curious to see what you think of it at home and here in the room. So I see innovations. So that is, to all the Venture Challenge members, a big compliment. I see Anja's name. I see Hanneke's name. Obviously, those presentations were very inspiring. The prize, I do see lifestyle changes. I see enthusiasm, COVID-19 update, new developments, vaccine safety, novelties, sharing, good food. So I think we have a lot of nice words. Am I missing something that we feel that we should be mentioning? Anybody from the room that would like to call out something out loud? Eline as a moderator.
Yes, I think that's a very good remark.
The pitches, I think you've been doing a great job there. Community together, getting everybody together here is actually a good thing, since we can't do it live. Doing it digitally was a good thing as well, I think. The content, but come on, I think the applause goes to the Venture Challenge Innovations, Hanneke and Anja. So there we go. Thank you. So we can't do any networking this year, unfortunately, but fortunately, we will be able to do that next year. We're here to thank our partners, Health Holland, Leiden Bioscience Park, PwC, Axon, and Pivot Park. And this is not in my script, but I'm going to mention it. I'd like to thank Miranda de Recht, because she's been stressing out like crazy to get this all arranged. So thank you very much for all the good work of getting our community together here. Next year, we already have a date. It's going to be November 25th, 2021. So mark it in your agendas, and there will be a special offer for the online attendees today, so you'll get it in your email. And we're really excited to see you next year. So stay positive, test negative, and we'll see you then. Thank you.